Well, hello, everyone, and welcome back once again to the VOV Network. Today, we're going to get into a very interesting topic, and it has to do with choosing your happiness. And why we came up with this and what we really thought that this mattered has to do with something called certainty versus uncertainty. And what we mean by that is sometimes we'll stay in situations, whether it's relationships, careers, any situation where because you choose to be there because you feel certain of what you can predict, what the outcomes are going to be, and how things are going to go, even though you might not be happy, satisfied, or fulfilled in that situation, but but you choose to stay anyway. And that's really what we're talking about here. And what we wanted to focus in on is having the courage, being bold enough, striking fear in the face, and moving forward to get yourself out of those situations where you've chosen to remain because you're certain of what you're going to get versus the uncertainty and the unknown of what's on the other side. Stick around. Let's get into it. Bridget, how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing great. I am doing great. How are you?
I'm fantastic. So we're here, we're live, and what we want to talk about really has to do about choosing your happiness. And we want to bring this to the table, and I'll first talk a little bit about it from my perspective and why I think it's an important subject. Really wanted to focus in on it from the standpoint of compromising or settling or not standing up for what it is you truly deserve, or even maybe not just going out and fighting for what it is in life that you truly want out of life, because you've kind of gotten into this place of comfort, which is one way to look at it. Maybe there's some fear associated with what might be unknown out there, or change and the effort that it may take to go through that change. So instead of taking that, finding the courage within yourself, or um, having that initiative to try to move forward, we'll choose to stay in that place of true discomfort because we're certain what that's going to be like, but
Hmm.
but we're uncertain about what will happen when we actually take that leap of faith and do make those changes. What do you think about that? Have you had any experiences like that, or what's your perspective?
Definitely, definitely. We're all comfortable with certainty, right? And like as you said, in the thought of uncertainty, it really just turns my stomach in knots.
Hmm.
And I'm sure others feel the same way. But what I am learning in both choosing happiness rather than certainty, or certainty rather than happiness, is it's a lesson in both.
Hmm.
And I'm going to talk about that. The lesson in choosing either side, or the lesson in experiencing either side.
Absolutely, yeah, and there are lessons absolutely to be learned, and that's really what we want to do. Is just share some of the things that we have experienced personally, observations and the perspectives on both sides of that fence, and why we feel taking those steps is really the better choice versus staying and agonizing through, uh, giving up, going after truly being happy, truly being fulfilled, truly being satisfied, and whatever those goals or objectives are in life. Uh, Bringing that up, and that's really what I want to talk about next. It has to do with happiness. I mean, that's a big word, happiness. What does it mean? That's like saying, what does love mean, right? And because it obviously means many different things to different
Hmm.
people.
Hmm.
So we're not going to sit here and try to frame what happiness should look like or should be for each individual out there, because it's going to be different for everybody, right? And then
Hmm.
that's just naturally what we are going to choose to expect. But the key is to be able to identify and then self-identify whether you are happy or satisfied or fulfilled with whatever or wherever you are in your life or not. And that's really why we wanted to bring that up. When we say, get to this place of happiness, it's not a necessarily a destination or a specific thing, but it is an awareness that I think people need to have of themselves and within themselves. Am I happy? Am I satisfied? Do I feel fulfilled? Uh, what are your thoughts on that?
So a friend of mine, Katina, she posted a question this week, and she posted, "Are you happy?" And so I replied, "Define happy,"
Hmm.
because some people were saying yes, no, and nobody ever said define happy.
Hmm.
Because of course it means different things to different people. And so she responded, happiness is content. Happy is content. And so I replied, because for me, happiness is when I'm fruitful, like when I'm helpful, when I'm producing good, whether it's good feelings, good service, good results. It's when I'm fruitful. So some
Mhm.
people think happiness is content. Happiness could be love. Happiness could be, I mean, it's just a lot of different feelings because it
Mhm.
is a feeling.
It is a
It's not a,
feeling.
it's not a state of being.
Right.
It is a feeling. So yes, it is different for everybody. So for me, happiness is being fruitful. And so basically it's an action.
And see, and again, that's why we really wanted to bring that up and get that out on the table so people really can start to dive into and think about what is happiness to them from a definition standpoint in their world, right? Because you say, fulfillment, and you're putting things out there, and you're contributing, and that's the space that really makes you happy. And you've heard me say this a lot of times. One of the things that I look for is peace, and I really mean that more from the standpoint of, in some ways, predictability and consistency, right? That,
Hmm.
that things are just not helter skelter, right? And just all over the place. So trying to find that rhythm in life, that harmony in life, that there seems to be some predictability, some peace, some harmony. That's for me a place of happiness, right?
Right.
So totally different than yours,
Right.
but
And that's
still
the way it is
right.
because some people would think your definition of happiness, like the predictability, okay, that's kind of boring for me. And then some people would think my definition of happiness being fruitful, they would be like, oh, that's tiring for me.
Mhm.
That's doing a lot of stuff for other people. That's not, that doesn't make me happy. If I'm doing something for myself, that makes me happy. So everybody has their own definition of happiness. And that is something that we really have to horn in on is, having your own definition of happiness, because I've heard people say that happiness is based on a feeling or something has to happen for you to be happy, and that's when you go into happiness or joy. And that's a whole total different topic
Yeah.
that we could go that
Yeah.
we can go on. And so you really have to think about what actually makes you happy. So when you say, "Are you happy?" you really need to think about what really makes you happy.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a whole different subject, and we'll go down that road, I think, a different time. But that goes back to being grateful and showing gratitude, because you get in that cycle of, well, when I get the new job, then I'll be happy. But then you get the
Hmm.
job, and then you say, but then when I get the new car, well, then I'll be happy. Right? And then you get that too, and then, but when I get the new house, well, then I'll be happy. Right? But what about all of that time as you've gone through these steps, which may have been 2 or 3 years? So are you saying to yourself that, you're not happy, you're not satisfied, you're not fulfilled, you're not grateful with what you've had in your life that period of time? And that's the trap that we really need to look out for when we talk about happiness and saying that there's a place or a thing that we need to get to achieve it. And we have to be really, really cautious of that.
And I
Um,
think that's where my friend Katina was going with. That's where she was going when she said contentment, because really, like you just said, when I get this, I'll be happy. When I get this, I'm happy. But what about the journey to it? And a lot of people say, well, on payday, I'm just so happy, but that in between time, I'm in a bad mood. Well, something has to happen for you to be happy. So what about that in between time? What are you doing in the between that payday and that payday? Are you still content? Are you still doing things that you enjoy? Are you still learning these lessons that won't necessarily make you unhappy until Friday come again?
mhm,
So I can understand her saying being content, meaning, okay, I did get paid. I'm content, but I'm content even if I didn't get paid.
mhm,
And so you fill your life up with things that matter, even if the payday never came. I'm still happy.
absolutely.
So I think that's where she was going with that.
Yeah. And I want to transition from there to talk a little bit about, obviously, happiness in relationships and personal relationships is always going to be a key component. And we sometimes we get into those relationships where you're being mistreated, abused, taken advantage of, et cetera, et cetera. And hopefully at some point you come to that realization and you choose to make a change.
Hmm.
uh, but a lot of people don't. They'll stay because at least they're certain what's going to happen there. It's like if I step out here on my own, or if I make this change, it's just total world of unknown, and their
Mm-hmm.
fear of that is greater than the experiences that they're already having, which are obviously not positive experiences. So they'll choose to exist in that state versus moving on to the next state out there. Which, I definitely wanted to bring that to the table to say, you've got to think that through from a self-realization standpoint. And that's when the title basically says, you know, choose happiness. That means in that time, if you're not being fulfilled, you're not being treated properly, respected, et cetera, then that's a choice then you need to make to remove yourself from that situation and move on to something different. Now, are there guarantees? There's no guarantees in life at all, right? So it could be a rough road, it could be a tough journey, but the key of it is to have some understanding and some realizations, and then go about setting some path of action to try to change that for yourself. Um, and then
And,
I also want to transition it really quick, and I'll come back and jump on both pieces of it. This also happens a lot with careers. I think a lot of people end up working in a job or a situation with work that they're not really happy or satisfied or fulfilled with. But they have this pressure of got to pay the mortgage and the kids got to eat and blah blah blah. But so they won't necessarily pursue that thing that they're truly passionate about, or what they've always wanted to do in life, or a new opportunity comes along, but it's a smaller company or it's a startup. And so there's obviously risks that are associated with making that change. So now they're
mhm.
uncomfortable. So it's like, that looks like a great opportunity. And that's really right down the line. I really want to start to do in my life. But I'm over here and I've already been here 5 years or 10 years, and it's wash, rinse, repeat, right? And they're in that cycle. So instead of rocking the boat, they choose to stay and not pursue what
Mhm.
could be a greater or a better opportunity for them. And a lot of people say, well, yeah, well, it might not be. I said, but you will never know unless you actually take the step. It's like skydiving. You can go up in the plane, you can put on the chute, you can do every piece of it,
And that jump.
but not until you actually step out of the plane. You haven't actually had the experience. So, and I know you want to chime in and share a few thoughts on both sides of that coin.
Well, that's just the jumping part. Just jump and do it afraid and do it afraid. And so um I just want to speak about what toxicity means to me in terms of what you said,
Mhm.
what you noted, the relationship piece, and the even when it's not just the intimate relationships, the family relationship, business relationships, the toxicity in jobs and careers, and nobody really talks about this, but the toxicity in how the relationship you have with yourself, how you treat yourself. Nobody talks about that
Yeah.
because we have toxic relationships with ourselves as well, how we care about ourselves. And so we need to understand that sometimes the way we treat ourselves is toxic as well. We don't it's not always the outside influence.
Hmm. That is very, very true. That is a very, very true statement. So key components there. I mean, obviously, it's the self evaluation, self realization pieces of it. That because everything starts there, right? And as you go through that process, I'm not saying it's easy, because a lot of things in life definitely are not easy when you look at it from that standpoint. But again, you've got those fears, and those fears are natural things. I mean, it's natural to have a fear of change. It's natural to have a fear of being alone. If you've been in a relationship for a while, and all of a sudden you go, "I want to make a change," but now I'm alone. What's that going to be like? Because it's a place you haven't been in a while. Uh, it's a fear of being judged, right? And that's a big one, because a lot of the times we will stay and do one thing because we don't want to be judged by others. Like, you did what? But you had this great job. And in their minds, looking from the outside in, it might have looked like the perfect job, but it might not have been the perfect job for you, right? Because that's the thing. We're all individuals, and we all, sometimes want to jump in and pass these judgments
Hmm.
on different situations, but you are not that individual. So what makes them tick, what's in their soul, what's in their heart, mind, and spirit, it's going to be different from yours. So that gives them a little bit of a different perspective on why they may want to make a change or go in a little bit different direction. And sometimes we need to just say, you know what, I'm not worried about what they say, the committee of they, as I call it. Just do what it is that you need to do to satisfy self. Sometimes it's really what matters. And then the last one I just want to throw out is a lot of times also, and it's partial judgment, but we a lot of times don't want to be seen as a quitter. I'm not a quitter. I'm going to fight and I'm going to stay and I'm going to make this work. Right. And this is the mindset that we jump into.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely. Definitely.
Uh,
And I'm going to just speak on the types of toxic areas I've had in my life, and maybe someone can identify with these areas, and then we'll talk about the exit strategies later, and why I chose and what I chose, if it was certainty over happiness or happiness over certainty. So in terms of relationships, toxic for me was, being manipulated. I'm not talking about just intimate relationships. I'm talking about all types of relationships, whether it be family, business relationships, partnerships, and something. And then, so that's being manipulative. And that another thing is guilt tripping, or tit for tats, or bringing up past failures. That is a very toxic behavior and toxic traits. If you know someone that is doing that, or if if you're at a workplace where that is happening, and hurtful actions against you. However, for me, the lesson, as I said at the top of the hour, the lesson for me was I had to accept my flaws. I had to accept my flaws. And more than that, I had to accept my past. I had to accept all these things. And more than that, I had to acknowledge them, like out loud.
Right.
Two people.
Yep.
Two people.
Yep.
So it can never be held against me. It can never be held over my head anymore. So yeah, I did that. Yeah, that was me. Yeah, I know. We've already talked about that.
Yep.
So that can no longer harm me. So that's one thing I had to do. That was my role in it. And then I had to learn how to focus on in any type of relationship, whether it was with my family or whatever. I had to learn how to focus on my needs. Enough that I could recognize when those needs weren't being met.
That's the key. That is the key.
It gave me some freedom to, when I could focus on my needs, like really hone in on what my needs were, I can see when they weren't getting met. And then that gave me some freedom to love others freely from that place. Yes. From that place. And these were not needs that I thought I had or needs that I just went along with that I really didn't have. It was the real needs that I had. In terms of jobs and careers, I've been at workplaces where there was gossip, where there was backstabbing coworkers, or micromanaging admin or supervisors. However, the lesson I learned was great work ethics, right? Because I always wanted to cover my see why?
Yeah, that part.
That part. So, and it motivated me to set goals at work. And so when I set those goals at work, then I saw, hey, I could do more than I was actually doing. So even though they were micromanaging me and I had these backstabbing coworkers, it was pushing me to do better and pushing me to do more. So that was something that I learned to do. And then I learned I couldn't just trust everybody. So that means I had to keep my mouth closed. I couldn't just talk to everybody about my problems, about their problems, about how I felt about what was going on at work. Even if the whole break room was talking about it, I couldn't chime in because it would be said, well, me and Bridgit was talking about, and my name was out there. So I learned I couldn't just talk every time everybody was talking.
Yep.
So that was a lesson I learned in the job workplace. And in terms of the toxic relationship I was having with myself, it was definitely comparing my life to other people. And we talked about this before, making decisions based on fear, living my life based on what other people thought I should do. and being unhealthy on the inside, as stress eating. And I've talked about that before. So
Right.
those are the toxic areas that I had in my life. And I hope other people can identify with that and looking internally and thinking, what are the toxic traits? Because a lot of times when we say, oh, I'm in a toxic relationship, or oh, I'm in a toxic workplace, we look a lot about what people are doing and what someone is saying. And we don't often look at the lesson that could be learned in that.
Right. Right. That's very true. That's a very true statement. And it does take um some forethought, and it's that whole thing about picking your battles, right? Because and the analogy I've used 1,000 times, how to eat an elephant. It's one bite at a time, right? So you can't just solve maybe everything in one fell swoop, but you can start to think it through, start to formulate ideas and approaches so that you can bite off pieces of it, right? But it goes back, and Bridget, I think one of the key things that you said in all of that was identifying A, your needs, but B, when they're not being met, right? And that's the thing where I think a lot of people get hung up when you start talking about happiness or unhappiness or certainty or uncertainty. Is A, they've got to be to truly identify what their needs are, what really feeds them as an individual, and
Mm-hmm.
then are these needs being met? At what level, at what degree, at what percentage, and is that enough?
Mm-hmm.
And if the answer in any way is no, that's not enough, then that's what we are talking about today. Is okay. So what are you going to do about it, right? And what that may look like from person to person, as far as what those action steps may be, are obviously going to greatly vary because everybody's situation is unique. We all have different skills and abilities and various things. But the key component is, if you've identified it, are you just going to accept it as it is? Hey, status quo, just roll with it. Or are you actually going to take some action to see if you can get it to change to be better so that your needs are met, so that you do feel more fulfilled and that you move toward a quote unquote happier place in life?
And like you said before, I understand that it's not just black or white. It's a lot of gray area. Yeah, you've been on your job for 30 years. Okay. Yeah, you've been in relationships for a long term. This is your family. You just can't cut them off. This is how you've always done in your life. How do you start to change that? So it feels comfortable. Like it's going to be weird. It's going to feel uncomfortable. It's going to a lot of feelings. I understand that.
Mhm.
I've been there. I've never been on a job 30 years, but I know about long term something.
Right.
However, yeah, it's not black and white. It's a lot in between that, but it's intent when you decide to be intentional about it. Um, then you have to do those things and you have to learn those lessons. And I got the learning lessons from a friend of mine, Randall Upshaw. She put out a TikTok about the lessons you learn from toxicity. And so hats off to her. But like the comedian David Arnold, who just passed away, said, it's not for the weak.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's not for the weak.
Hmm.
Choosing happiness over uncertainty. It's not for the weak. And so you just have to be intentional in doing so.
Right. Absolutely right. Absolutely right. And then, this is the part where I talk about the things that obviously you have to be brave because, as you said, it's not for the weak. It's a funny term, but I call it self liberation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is it's really what it's based in. And what are those steps? What do I need to do to quote unquote liberate myself from whatever the situation may be that is holding me back or having me feel disrespected or not fulfilled, et cetera, et cetera. So to liberate yourself from that, what are the steps that you need to take? And then obviously, then this is where you have to also look at yourself and go, okay, I have to have trust in myself. I have to have confidence in myself. I have to have belief in myself. right? And this is where we go back to what we even do here at the VOV Network and the Village of Voices is everything is focused on self-excellence. We're trying to cultivate, enhance, and preserve what I deem to be self-excellence. So self being the first word in that means we're
Nothing.
looking
Yes.
internally, right? It's so what are the things that you are doing for self to make sure that you self are brave, you self are confident, you self are sit there and you're in a space of belief, having true self belief in who you are and what your abilities are and everything else. That's the place to focus first so that you can stand those things up and have those walls and those foundations be solid. Once that's there, then that's where you can build the second level of the fort, which is to get yourself out and over the wall
Mm-hmm.
towards that freedom and the unknown and what's next for you, because you've built this base in the first part that's so solid. And that was one of the key components I really wanted to make sure I hammered home. And what we're talking about today is waking up tomorrow and probably just having it to be a knee-jerk reaction to say, you know what, I'm going to go do this, might not be the best thing to do, right? Because maybe you don't have everything that you need as part of the foundation
Mm-hmm.
set yet. So you're kind of setting yourself up to quote unquote fail, as they say, right out of the box, because you haven't done A, you try to jump straight to C,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I think that's a key component to look at too. And this is, where are you in these different areas? Do you truly have the self-confidence, self-belief, et cetera, within yourself? Not what others think, not what their judgments are, not what the world says, where you should be, who you should be, but this is none of that. This is that talk that really is between your head and your heart, and then also those things that your gut tells you, because that's what's really going to matter when you start to try to make these transitions and make these changes.
And you cannot say self enough,
Right.
because a lot of times when we start making changes, or we start to identify things we need to change, we start to, it's easier for us to look at how other people have made us feel, or what other people would think, or how the barriers or the obstacles going to be because of other people, than to think about ourselves and what we're doing to stop it, and how we're gonna make that happen, how self is gonna make that happen. And I posted something one time about, we always say the enemy, and sometimes it's the inner me.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And
Yep.
so we have to start there, about the way we think, and not always. And it's so in the Bible is, as a man thinketh, so is he. And so we have to stop thinking, talking about what's going to stop us on the outside, and like you say, we have to internalize that thing and talk and think about what we need to do in the process and the foundation, and that we need to lay.
1,000%. And it's just so true. Um, and I'm hoping that that's the awareness that we're imparting here to our viewers, is to say, listen, the key is to start within. Where are you? What's the true foundations and different things? And that ties back to, as you've go through evaluating what your needs are and why are they being met or not. And again, it's your needs. It's not what the other person thinks your need should be, or they believe that they're meeting your need. Because if it's not, then those are the times when you have to clearly express what it is that you're not receiving, uh, how it makes you feel, and open up and express those feelings. And that's what we won't do a lot of times either. Is we won't share. And as I say all the time, we're treating the symptoms a lot, but we actually don't treat the cause
Mm-hmm.
of why you're sick to begin with, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're going about each day, we'll do a little of this and a little of that to kind of treat the symptoms, because this is the side effect of what's happening because of the main thing. But how about we actually, and a lot of times we know what the thing is, but we'll still choose just to treat the symptoms associated with it versus actually
Right.
working on changing, doing something about the thing that's causing all of these issues and the problems and the symptoms to begin with.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm learning that. Well, I've learned that through other people's experiences and sharing their experiences have helped me along the way. So I just want to share my experiences and my exit, so to speak, exit strategies. I chose happiness and how that looks for me, which is fruitful. Because in terms of a career or a job, I could have stayed at a job that didn't require a degree. That Even though there were levels of toxicity in that workplace, I still, was still didn't have to stretch myself, but I still brought a paycheck home,
Mhm.
right? And I mean, it was in my head. I was thinking, well, it's 8 to 5. You're off on the weekends. You still bring a paycheck home. You got to deal with that for 8 hours. That's all. You don't have to do. You can come home, but that was feeding to my spirit still for those 8 hours. That's a lot of hours to have to deal with that. But you're certain about that, right?
Mhm.
Because every day you have a job, you don't have to stretch yourself. So
Mhm.
I had to come to terms with, hey, this is not benefiting me. This is not good for me. This is not growth for me. And most of all, this is not fruitful for me. I'm not producing good from this. And so I had to stretch myself. I had to stretch myself to reach a goal where I could be fruitful.
Right.
And so then I went on to, go back to school and get my degree and then get a master's, just so that I could remove myself from that toxic workplace. And it was a brave move for me. And it was a time where I had to be consistent. It was a long, it took forever to do. But that was the consistency in a relationship, in all my relationships, whatever they were. I had to be brave enough to choose me. And some people would say
Say that
brave.
again. Say that
I
one
had
more
to
time.
be
Say that out loud one more time.
brave enough to choose me. And some people would say brave, because if you've never really chose yourself, you're scared of or you don't know what that looks like, or people may say you're coming off as selfish, right?
Mhm.
And so it's easy to stay in relationships that are toxic because you're certain that they're going to be there, no matter what kind it is, no matter what kind of relationship you're in. You're not alone,
Right.
right? So then there's this big question. Y'all ready? What do I do with my alone self if I choose me?
Boy, do I have some answers for that. But okay.
What do I do with my alone self? So that's the uncertainty. Okay, I have chose me. I have set boundaries. People not agreeing with it. They are distancing themselves. Nobody calling me. Nobody want to hang out no more because she is her authentic self. So what am I going to do with myself? I have not been alone before. So what do I do?
Yep. So let me jump in there because I want to go back when we were talking a little bit ago about the whole self excellence thing, right? And the within self, right? And what happens, unfortunately, a lot of the times when people do figure out a way and get the strength and the courage to tear themselves away, and now they're alone with self, then they really realize how much they don't like self, right? Because they've been blinded, they've been distracted, had other things that have kept them from actually truly internalizing and looking at self and some different things. And then now all of a sudden you have this alone time, and in that space of being alone, you realize, oh my God, I don't like this about me, and I don't like that about me. I need to work on this. I need to work on that. And not that that's bad. I'm just, it's a realization that a lot of the times people find themselves in that space. And then once you're there, you again, that's another choice, right? From the standpoint of, do you just go, well, it's who I am, and I'll just let it be what it be, or do you actually start to do some things for self that you have now become aware of for yourself, and start to make some additional changes and transitions to move you in a different direction. Uh, so, and Bridget just said, and this goes back to what we always talk about with everything that we share as far as trying to move you forward. It is a journey. All of what we talk about is a journey. Are you ever going to arrive? No, you never do. So you figure, okay, I got out of the frying pan now and I'm here and I'm good. But then now I'm out of the frying pan. I realize I don't necessarily like all of the parts of the person that I am. So now I need to make another change. And then I get to this level and it's like, well, now my career is because of my eyes are open as to who I am more, right? And what I really want to feed me. And so the career, the position I'm in, doesn't feed that piece of me that I have now awakened, right?
Mhm.
So then now there's another change. So this is
Mhm.
what we're talking about. It is an
Mhm.
ongoing self-realization, as I said, self-liberating journey that you're really going on uh, as you start to go about this process of true self-realization and true self-excellence. So,
Absolutely, absolutely. And let me note this that I understand, and I don't want to speak for Bryan, but I'm sure he understands that we know you have family. We have family. We know that you may have spouses, and we know you may have, roles in a position at your job. But we're not saying this is a cutoff thing. We're saying that other people are going to be affected by this change. Other people are going to be affected about your self-awareness. We're not saying, oh, become self-awareness and forget what they think about.
mhm,
We're not saying that. But what I'm saying is this: as you change and become self-aware and decide what you're going to choose, whether it's certainty or uncertainty, whatever happiness, your needs are going to definitely change. For me, it did.
mhm,
Now, was it fair for the people that have been with me all those years, have been my family all those years? Have I? No. Maybe for my job, was it fair to them? It was not. I'll be the first to say that it was
mhm.
not fair for them. But the thing about love is what I think deem love to be is unconditional, right? Things are going to change. Love is love. People
Mhm.
change,
Yes, they
but
do.
the love is consistent. So if people are in your lives, if even in your workplace, if you want to change roles in that job, or even if you want to leave, if your manager or whoever is above you wants you to succeed, they will agree on letting you go based on they care about you succeeding.
Yep.
Um, if the people that in your family want to see you be healthy mentally, they will understand that your needs changed and they will fit themselves into those needs as you do them as well, right? If your
Right.
boundaries have changed, they will fit themselves into those boundaries because it's all a healthy relationship. It's nothing unhealthy. And you're not going to pick something for yourself that's going to be unhealthy for you. Now, maybe it's not going to be good for them, but they're going to have to find out their needs, and that's not your business.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so we're not
You're right.
saying it's gonna be all good, and are you gonna chop them off and say forget about them? I know for me, when my needs change and when my boundaries change, there are some people I can count on my hand that were not pleased with that. But as time has progressed, they have gotten to the point where this is how Bridget is now. So if we love her, we're gonna just kind of like see how we fit, or we're not.
Yep. And Bridget, we've talked about this before because one of the things that I've shared just is talking about as you do grow, right? And you've got obviously a peer group or a circle of friends or family members or whatever you want to say, and you're on this essential same level together. And then you start to evolve, you do some things different. There starts to become this gap
Mm-hmm.
between where you are and
Where you
where
were.
they are, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then this is again choice. Everything revolves around choosing what's going to be best for you, the
Mm-hmm.
individual, right? Because it's your life, and you have the right to try to live your best life. So as you're going and you're evolving your way up the scale, there starts to become this void between you, right? This gap. Then this is the choice. Do you choose to step back down for their comfort, or do you hold your place and challenge them to rise to your level, right? And that's the key to look at because again, either way you're looking at that's a choice that needs to be made. And if you hold your ground and say, you know what, I've worked too hard to on myself and to help myself evolve and be brave and move forward, so I'm going to stand my ground where I am, they need to start to work to elevate to me. And that doesn't happen, that's not your responsibility.
Mm-hmm. It's not your business.
Yeah.
It's not your business. We get caught up in that,
Hmm.
man, well, they say I changed, so maybe I need to go back or, like that, or maybe I need to be this way. And I mean, rightfully so. They're not coming from a place of anger or hate, just don't want to see you succeed. They're just going on a place of what's comfortable for them and what used to be and what's always been. And that's understandable. But
Yep.
That's a teaching moment for you to, talk to them about the changes that you made and how they can make those same changes if they need to. Because sometimes people don't want to see, your shine, because it kind of shines on them as well. So it forces them to come up. And a lot of people are uncomfortable with that. And that's just what it is.
Yep. Yep. So true. As I say, choose to be the lighthouse. I'll choose to be the lighthouse. I'll be the guide. I'm going to move. And I'm hoping that you do make change, because I see change as a positive thing, as something that moves you forward, something that challenges you, something you can learn from, because I believe learning and growth is something you should never stop doing in life. So with that said, let's transition to bringing this home and talking about exit strategies or planning, or how, as you come to these realizations, maybe some of the things we've done on our side of the fence or observed that we've seen work to try to move yourself forward.
Well, as I said, in terms of job and career, I was going in this circle. Like, all my jobs were doing basically the same, because everybody has to start somewhere. So I don't ever hate on small beginnings. No. I know you have to start somewhere. I don't ever hate on small beginnings. Yeah. But at some point you need to keep going, right? Mm-hmm. And so small beginnings are made for what they're made for. Mm-hmm. And then you go up. So you don't, you have to start somewhere. And that and so I started somewhere. So it wasn't for me to stay there. And I understood that, but it was comfortable there. Mm-hmm. Even with the toxic behavior at the workplace, it was comfortable and I was getting a check. So what I had to do is I just had to decide one day, okay, you have to move forward. And so I had to believe in myself that I could do it. With all the obstacles that I had to face, I had to believe in myself and be confident that I can do it. And as long as it took for me to finish school, mm-hmm. As long as it took for me to get those degrees, I had to believe that I could do it. Now, did I get a better job? I'm a teacher, so I don't know. You decide. But the goal was to push myself to complete the goal, to complete what I had set out to do in the beginning, and just felt comfortable enough that I just didn't want to do it anymore. Right. So I had to push myself out of that box. So that was my exit strategy, to become more confident, even in relationships, and even in how I was having a toxic relationship with myself. I had to decide, okay, you have to be brave and confident enough to make that statement. I'm not accepting that anymore from me, or I'm not accepting that first from me, because I teach people how to treat me, in essence. So I have, that's you like that one, didn't you? Mm-hmm. So I have to say, I don't accept that anymore from me.
Right.
Because I was allowing it. I can't blame them. I'm the one allowing it. You're the one allowing it.
That's correct.
So you have to you decide, I'm not taking that anymore from myself, and then work work from myself to other people. And so that's what I had to do. In terms of relationships, and the same thing as far as the relationship with myself. Decide, okay, what do you want to do? Be unhealthy and complain about it, or be healthy or start doing the work to be healthy, or stop doing both. You can't be on both sides of the fence. You can't be complaining about it and being unhealthy at the same time. What are you doing? Right. So I had to have those conversations.
Yep. So let me jump in real quick, because I want to go back to something you said, talking about when you were asking that question of, I'm a teacher, so is that better or whatever? But what I want to say to that is, for our audience out there, is is your career an important thing in your life? Yes. But don't necessarily let that define you. Don't let that be the box that you get put into as far as what defines who you are, your success in life, or any of that piece. I'm not saying it's not a compliment and it's not important. That is not what I'm saying, but don't let that be the defining factor. And the reason I bring it up too, in your case, Bridgit, is you went back and you were saying, I made this choice. I said, I'm going to go back to school, and it took me some time, but I got it done, and it moved me to the place. So I look at that, and then I say, okay, let's rewind to that point. You make those decisions, you start going down that road. Now you have two organizations that you run above and beyond what you do as a educator, right? So the question is, had you not taken that leap to even go down the road of education for yourself, do you think you'd be at a point now where you'd be running these organizations, so that would even be a thought for you? So I think, again, it's building
Absolutely.
blocks, right?
Yes, absolutely not. It was a building block. Absolutely not. Like my mind couldn't even think along those lines. Like my mind couldn't even stretch along those lines because number one, not saying that everybody is built for college. We know everybody is not, but for me, it built my confidence.
Hmm.
The knowledge I had built my confidence in other areas
Hmm.
because and not the knowledge that I learned in school and in college, the knowledge that I learned about myself and what I could do.
Hmm.
And so I knew that if I could do that, and then I could turn around and go to grad school, I could do that. Then I could turn around and build an organization. I could do that. And then I could do this, and then I could do that. So for me, it wasn't exactly my degree. It was how I obtained the degree. And so as a teacher, I kid and say, well, I'm a teacher, so I don't know if that's, a big career move, but I am more than a teacher, even in the classroom.
Hmm. Hmm.
So,
Absolutely. Yeah. So, and talk about exit strategies, transitions, and, figuring out what your plan is going to be for that. And I'll show a personal story. For those, a lot of people know, some don't. The way I actually live in Hawaii and I've been here a long time. And a lot of people say, well, how did that happen? What was that? And it was a very well planned out thing. I knew it was going to be a place of possible discomfort because it was a move I made by myself. So as we talked about earlier, it's that whole alone piece and then getting used to the new environment. But I originally came up with, what, I think I really want to do this kind of idea in July and August of the year before. And I started strategically putting things into place and looking at job opportunities and, ending a job opportunity and when would that happen and what would it cost to transition. And I mean, all of these various steps. And I didn't actually make the move until February, early March the following year. So half a year to make that process happen. But the whole point is once you set your sights on something, again, making it knee jerk is probably not the best answer. Definitely take that time to do your due diligence, figure out what is going to be the best strategy for your life that's
mhm,
going to make the most sense for you to be able to successfully make that transition and whatever that looks like for you. So that's a key component, I think, for people to realize is it takes time. Just
right.
as you said with the school, I got through it. It took some time
Yeah. You
me
got to
making
make
the
a
I
plan.
didn't wake up one morning and say I'm moving tomorrow. I planned out how that was
Right.
going to look.
You know me, I'm very random. So there are some decisions that I've made right away. Some I regretted and some I did not. But for this particular session, you have to make a plan. You cannot wake up tomorrow and say, okay, I'm just going to focus on me and just cut everybody off.
Right.
It's probably not going to work well in conversation. Even at your job, I'm just going to leave. I'm just going to put my 2 weeks in because I think I deserve better pay. I think I can do something better. Well, that's not going to work well in terms of your household expenses. We already know that. So
Mhm.
yeah, even in the relationship you have with yourself, you're going to you're going to gain weight, lose weight, gain weight, lose weight. Or you're going to be going through this mental breakdown. Then you're good one day, you're not the next day. And so all of it takes some strategic planning.
Yes, it does. Yeah. Yeah. So the awareness to do that, and another analogy I often use, and you've heard it 1,000 times from me, is you have to put your oxygen mask on first, as they instruct you on the plane, before you try to help someone else. And that's the overarching message today about choosing your happiness.
Hmm.
So whatever that oxygen is that's coming out of the mask, that's your happiness. That's what we're talking about.
We
That's
say it
what
all
you're
the
looking
time.
for. You want to figure out how to put yourself in that position so that you're taking care of self first and foremost, because that's really the only way you're going to be of benefit to anyone, whether it's
Hmm.
personal careers, jobs, families, whatever else is going on in your life. So focus there first.
Right.
Bridgit, final thoughts before we wrap up today.
This has been great. I'm moving forward. I am still I'm doing the same thing that we just talked about. I'm still learning. I'm still choosing. It's an ongoing process. I'm still choosing happiness. There is always some uncertainty coming against, in my life, about different situations, different relationships, whether they be new or old. And so it's an ongoing process, and you'll find that it's an ongoing process for you as well. So I'm still learning about this, and I'm still moving forward and using these same tools.
Yes, same for me. And it's the process, and that's the thing. It takes action, but it also takes patience. And that's the last message that I want to leave out there is, as you do start to formulate that plan, start to take those action steps. Don't try to break it off in big chunks that maybe you can't handle, because most times that'll stop you, right? Because you become discouraged because it's not moving fast enough, right? Just be content with the fact that you are taking the steps, not that each step needs to deliver this much. That's not what it's saying, but the fact that you are continuously taking those steps to move yourself in that direction. That's
Mm-hmm.
what you want to focus on, is the action. Focus on the action, not necessarily the immediate result of the action, because it could take some time.
Right. Enjoy the journey.
Enjoy
Enjoy the journey.
enjoy the journey. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. This is fantastic, Bridgit. Thank you. This is very, very helpful. Uh, we have a multitude of other videos on the VOV network, on the YouTube channel. One that I definitely recommend that you take a look at has to do with perfection, and it says there's no such thing basically as perfect. And I think that's a great one to kind of follow this one up with, because it really helps you get past that perfectionism and things have to be perfect before I make a change or make a transition, because there's never going to be that perfect moment really to do just about anything, right? So that might be a great video for you to take a look at. Please like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, I'll say aloha, and Bridgit, we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, have a great rest of the day.
Take care, everyone. Have a great weekend.